trembles under my stride. A shadow falls, but I won't hide.
For years, Brook has been one of the most overlooked Straw Hats. Most fans know him as the skeleton musician, the Soul King, the guy who asks women to see their panties. But the latest chapters reveal something much bigger. Oda has finally shown us who Brook was before the Rumbar Pirates, before Laboon, and before he ever became a Straw Hat. And once you understand Brook's past, something incredible becomes clear. Brook has been the same man his entire life. A man who dedicates himself completely to the people he chooses to follow. And that might explain why the mystery surrounding Gunko is so important. One of the biggest revelations from Brook's backstory is that he wasn't some wandering musician who accidentally became a pirate. Brook was an orphan, a child who was taken in by King Reuven and Queen Kindale of the Esperia Kingdom. They didn't simply give him a place to live, they gave him a purpose. Under their guidance, Brook was trained in the quick draw sword style, developing the speed and precision that would later become his trademark. Eventually, Brook rose through the ranks and became the commander of the battle convoy of Esperia. That's a massive responsibility. His duty wasn't just to fight, it was to protect the kingdom and, most importantly, watch over Princess Shuri. When you think about it, this completely changes the way we view Brook. Before he was a pirate, before he was a musician, before he was the Soul King, Brook was a guardian, a protector, a knight, somebody's right or left hand man, comparable to Zoro or Sanji, and that role has never truly left him. The most important part of this backstory isn't the swordsmanship, it's the loyalty. Brook pledged himself to King Reuven, not out of fear, not because he was ordered to, but because he genuinely believed in him. He trusted the king completely and followed his will without hesitation. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly how Brook treats Luffy. When Big Mom stood in front of him, Brook didn't hesitate. He didn't run. He didn't question whether victory was possible. He simply stood his ground, not because he thought he could win, but because protecting his captain and his crew came before anything else. The same loyalty he once gave King Reuven is now given to Luffy, and suddenly, one of Brook's most defining traits makes perfect sense. His loyalty isn't something he learned as a pirate. It's who he's always been. Brook doesn't follow leaders. He dedicates himself to people he believes are worthy. And once he makes that choice, he never turns back. And then comes the most heartbreaking revelation of all. Gunko isn't just someone from Brook's past. She is Princess Shuri, the very same princess Brook was entrusted to protect when he served the Esperia Kingdom. Think about what that means for the moment. Before becoming a pirate, before meeting Laboon, before sailing with the Rumbar Pirates, Brook's responsibility was to watch over Shuri. She wasn't just royalty, she was family. She was someone Brook dedicated years of his life to protecting, which makes their reunion absolutely devastating, because the girl Brook once swore to protect is gone. In her place stands Gunko, a servant of Imu. Even worse, the story reveals that Imu used Shuri as the instrument that killed King Reuven, the very king who rescued Brook from being an orphan. the man Brook pledged his loyalty to, the man who gave him a home, purpose, and a future. Imagine being Brook. You lose your kingdom. You lose the king you swore to serve. You spend decades believing that that chapter of your life is long behind you. And then suddenly, you're forced to look into the eyes of the princess you once protected, only to discover she was turned into the weapon that destroyed everything. That's not just tragedy, that's cruelty. And for perhaps the first time since joining the Straw Hats, Brook is facing an enemy that isn't simply just standing in his way. He's facing the living remains of a family he loved. Oda rarely revisits a Straw Hat's past without a reason, especially not this late in the story. Brook joined the crew hundreds of chapters ago. If Oda wanted this information to simply be background lore, he could have revealed it years ago. Instead, he's revealing it now, at the very moment Gunko is becoming one of the most important figures in the story. That tells me Brook isn't receiving his backstory as a reward. He's receiving it because he's about to become relevant again. For years, Brook has quietly stood in the background, while characters like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Robin received major story moments. But now the story itself is pulling Brook back into the spotlight, because this conflict isn't just connected to the world, it's connected to him personally. And if Gunko truly is Princess Shuri, then Brook may be heading towards the most emotional moment of his entire character arc since Thriller Bark. For a long time, fans viewed Brook as comic relief, a musician, a skeleton, a supporting character. But Oda's latest revelations remind us that Brook has always been much more than that. He was a knight, a protector, a loyal servant, a man who devoted his life to protecting people he loved. And now that the ghosts of his past are finally returning, the Soul King may be standing at the center of one of the most important stories in all of Elbaf. And honestly, I think Brook's biggest moment is still ahead of him. It's no face to face. Make sure you drop a like, a comment, subscribe. Anything helps the channel. Peace.